What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. In this video, I just wanted to talk to you guys about what's the first thing you should do when you get a gun. And is it take a picture for Facebook? Maybe. Is it go to the range and sight in your new rifle or new handgun or shotgun? No. Is it break in your barrel? No. Is it take a tactical training course? No. The first thing that you should do when you buy any gun, whether it's a rifle, shotgun, or handgun, is you should break the whole gun down and clean it completely from A to Z, okay? And what you're looking at here is my new AR-10. This is a POF Rogue. It has the 16.5-inch barrel, and it's in 308, not 6.5 Creedmoor. And I've broken this rifle down, and I'm cleaning it completely because it's a brand new gun. And over the years of shooting and being a gun owner for over 2 decades, I've owned over a dozen guns. And every time I noticed when I bought a new gun, it was always coated with some kind of rust preservative or grease of some kind. And so a lot of manufacturers will coat the inside of the barrel, which is known as the bore. They'll coat the bore with some kind of a rust preservative or rust preventative fluid of some kind. They have these heavy duty oils. They're not even oils. It's almost like a tacky substance. It's kind of like tar that you use to get grip when you play baseball, or any of you guys that ever watched a strongman competition, they put this pine tar. It's like a tacky, it's basically just like pine tar, and you put it on your hands to get better grip. And that's basically what this rust preventative or preservative they put on guns from the manufacturers. They put this like tacky preservative. It's almost like a grease or an oil, but it's different from an oil because it's sticky and it sticks to the metal surfaces of your gun, okay? And the reason why it's made to be sticky is so that it stays on the gun, because when they make these guns, they don't always sell them right away. They may make a gun and then they sell it 5 years from the day that they make it, or 2 years, or 6 months. And so they have to preserve the gun when it sits in the warehouse, okay? Now, not just manufacturers, but also some distributors and gun shops will also coat their guns with rust preservatives or rust preventatives or grease, okay? And the stuff, like I said, that I'm talking about is not just your normal gun oil, okay? It's a special type of rust preventative or gun preservative. It's not grease, okay? It's a special type of preservative, and it's very sticky, and it behaves a lot like pine tar that baseball players use or strongman athletes use. It's like a tacky, it's like sap. It's almost like pine sap, okay? And it's very like sticky. It sticks to the inside of the gun, and it protects the bore, it protects the chamber, it protects the receiver, it protects the bolt carrier, all the internals, whatever surface they coat with it, it protects it from rust, okay? And it's great from a long-term storage point of view. If you're a manufacturer or if you own a gun shop, it makes sense to do that, okay? To coat all of your guns with this long-term preservative or gun grease, whatever you want to call it, okay? It makes a lot of sense, right? But the problem is it's very sticky. It's a heavy-duty substance that's designed to stay on the gun for a long period of time in different environments, because when you ship a gun out, it may get really hot or it may get cold if it's in a truck, or depending on the temperature of the warehouse. If the gun is, let's say, left outside somewhere, in a receiving area outside of a gun shop. So these preservatives have to be very heavy duty because they're, the gun is being moved around a lot. Let's say you order a gun from your local gun shop, unless it's brand new straight from the manufacturer, that gun could have been transferred to 4 or 5 different distributors. And each time it gets transferred, it goes on a UPS truck, it gets left outside somewhere, then it's brought inside, etc., etc. So obviously it makes sense to protect the gun, put preservatives on there. If you're a manufacturer, or also if you're a gun store owner, you have guns in a display case, in your gun shop so people can see them. It makes sense to put preservative in there because those guns probably get handled a lot. They sit there for months and months and months. If you have guns that are in storage and are not very popular and there's a low demand for them, they may sit there 6 months or a year before someone buys them. So it makes sense to put a preservative on them. But if you're a gun owner, it's not good, okay? Because those preservatives are very thick and sticky, and they coat the inside of the barrel, the bore. They coat the bolt and the bolt carrier group if it's a semi-automatic like this rifle right here. They coat the inside of the receiver, and they leave this sticky, greasy substance, and it's just not good. If you're going to go to the range with a brand new gun and you haven't cleaned it, I can guarantee you that your point of impact is going to be all messed up when you try to sight it in, because for all intents and purposes, you're basically shooting out of a very dirty gun, because even though it's not dirty per se because there's no fouling in there, but the rust preventative or preservative is basically the same thing as fouling, because they coat it so thick that it prevents the bullet from making good engagement with the rifling inside of the bore. Okay, so it's basically the same thing as shooting a dirty gun, a very dirty gun. Now, some manufacturers, or a lot of manufacturers and gun stores, will test fire their guns and they won't clean them. Well, they all test fire their guns before they ship them out, but many of them will not clean the gun after they test fire it. So you're going to get a gun that may have been test fired once or twice or a couple of times. So there's also, in addition to the preservative or grease that they put in the gun to preserve it for long-term storage, there could also be some fouling from the bullet, copper fouling, powder residue, lead fouling, etc., inside of the bore and in the chamber and around the bolt, okay, the bolt face. So you have to clean your gun from A to Z when you get it, all right? That's the first thing you should do before you sight in your gun, before you take pictures for Facebook, before you take a tactical training course, before you do anything else. You have to clean your gun as soon as you get it from A to Z. You have to break the whole gun down and clean everything. Pay particular attention to the bore. Make sure you clean the bore very, very well. You may have to set aside 2 or 3 hours. It usually takes me about 2 or 3 hours to do a full A to Z deep clean of a gun, okay? So set aside 2 or 3 hours and do a very detailed cleaning of your gun as soon as you get it, as soon as you bring it home. I mean, it doesn't have to be right away, but before you take it to the range, before you do anything else, before you shoot your gun, make sure you do a detailed clean, put a YouTube video on, put a movie on and go to work, get the cleaning done. I actually personally enjoy cleaning my guns. I know it can get annoying, especially if you shoot it a lot. Like when I do a lot of my penetration tests, it gets annoying having to clean guns every single week or something like that. But it's a good way to familiarize yourself with your new gun also, breaking it down, getting intimately familiar with your new gun, how the bolt looks, how everything operates. You can read a lot about your gun in a manual or in a parts diagram, but actually breaking it down and looking at the gun, how all the parts fit together. And, it's a good thing to do to really familiarize yourself with your gun before you actually go to the range and shoot with it, So that's what I always do when I buy a new gun. And I've had over a dozen different types of guns, from revolvers, semi-automatics, bolt actions, lever actions. I've had many guns over the years. I've been shooting for over 20 years. Okay, so this is something that I always do, and I recommend that you guys do the same thing, because what's going to happen is, number one, when you try to go to sight in your gun, like I said, your point of impact is going to be all out of whack. It's going to be hard to get a consistent point of impact. And let's say you do sight your rifle in, your scope or your iron sights to those point of impact shots that you made with your new gun that you didn't clean. What's going to happen is, after you clean your gun, you're going to remove the rust preventative, the preservatives, the grease. You're going to remove all that. And then you're going to go to the range again with a clean gun, and your point of impact is going to be completely different. It may be off by a few inches at 100 yards, because when you sighted in your gun, it was really dirty. It had preservatives and grease and oil in it, and you sighted it in with that super dirty gun. And the bullet bearing surface, which is the cylindrical flat part on the bullet, it didn't make proper contact with the rifling, or the same type of contact as when your gun is clean, and that affects the point of impact. A rifle, a gun is a very precision tool. We're not talking about a hammer here, okay? A rifle, especially rifles, they can be very finicky. If they're dirty or clean, it affects the point of impact because of the contact that the bullet has with the rifling in your bore, and also because of other factors as well, like the jump to the lands and different things. So you want to clean your gun very detailed, A to Z, break it down, spend the time, and I guarantee you that you're going to be satisfied. Once you clean your gun and you go to the range, for 100%, you're 100% sure that your point of impact is not going to change after you clean it, okay? And you get all that preservative out of it, and you don't have to worry about it. Another thing, too, is that if you shoot your gun and it has all that preservative and grease in it, it could even be a safety issue. It could cause a pressure buildup. If a lot of that preservative gets into the rifling, it can cause a pressure buildup, and you could even have your gun explode. Okay, it doesn't take much of an obstruction inside of a gun barrel to cause a gun to explode, because guns operate at extremely high pressures. Okay, and guns are designed to have a place for the pressure to go. Okay, which means your bore and your barrel has to be clear, so all of that extreme pressure that's generated when the firing pin strikes the primer has a place to go. If there's even, small obstructions, okay, there's been documented cases of even a bug getting inside of somebody's muzzle, a bee, okay? I've personally read a story about a guy who had a bee get into his muzzle, and he shot his gun and it exploded, okay? So a lot of these manufacturers, based on what I've seen, I've owned guns from multiple manufacturers: Smith & Wesson, Ruger, Marlin, Remington. I've owned guns from multiple manufacturers, and some I've noticed put more grease than others. Some put more of that preservative than others. So it really depends on the company, and it also depends on who you buy it from. I remember one particular gun that I purchased. It had a lot of preservative and grease in it, and it happened to be a gun that was probably sitting in a gun shop for a while, and it wasn't really a popular item. It was a 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum with a 10.5-inch barrel. Not many people buy that gun, and my guess is it sat in this gun shop for months and years, maybe even 1 or 2 years, and the owner probably put preservative in there because he was afraid it would rust, and it was so thick, the preservative inside the bore, it was so much. And I'm just glad that I cleaned it, because I know for a fact if I went to the range without cleaning it, my gun could have blown up. Because the preservative, like I said, that preservative that they use, it's not regular gun oil. It's a very thick, heavy-duty substance that's almost like pine sap, okay? It's designed to stick to the metal because it could be there for months and years, and it has to be it has to adhere to the metal in order to protect it. It can't just, evaporate or, drip off like regular oil can drip off, because oil is it's a very slick substance. So, oil, what will happen is if you coat a metal or something inside of your gun, you coat it with oil, and over time, after a few weeks, a few months, the oil will kind of settle into lower areas of your gun, that it'll settle and move over time. And so these preservatives that they use are designed not to settle like regular gun oil does. They're designed to coat the surface and stick on it just like sap or pine tar, okay? So, and there's been documented cases of people leaving regular gun oil in their barrel and putting too much gun oil in their bore and having their gun explode or their point of impact change or different negative results, okay? And that's just regular gun oil. We're not even talking about this heavy-duty preservative, sappy, tacky substance, okay? And most people that know anything about guns, you can ask anybody who has a decent knowledge of shooting and hunting, they'll tell you never to oil the inside of your bore, okay? Because the fact that you could have a malfunction. If you do put oil in your bore, you're supposed to put very, very little, okay? But these manufacturers and gun stores, they put a ton of this preservative in there, so you want to get that out before you sight it in so your point of impact is consistent, and you remove that possibility of having an explosion. Another thing too is that when you leave that preservative in your gun, a lot of fouling will adhere to it. So if, let's say, you have some of that grease or preservative on your bolt carrier or on your bolt, what'll happen is it's kind of like a sticky substance, and it'll attract dust and dirt and fouling, okay? So that's another reason why you want to clean everything, not just your bore, but you want to clean your bolt carrier group, everything, okay? Here I even have my firing pin. I got the charging handle out. I'm cleaning everything, okay? Because you don't want dirt and fouling and, different things to adhere to the internal working parts of your gun, and especially inside of your bore. If, let's say, you leave that preservative in there, you're going to attract things inside of your bore, and they could stick to the inside. That could cause an obstruction. It's just not good. So that's what my recommendation is to you guys. Anytime you buy a new gun, make sure you clean it very thoroughly, okay? Detailed cleaning, set aside 2 or 3 hours. Don't rush through it. And in the process, you'll familiarize yourself with your gun and the parts and everything else. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you want me to do more videos like this on gunsmithing and stuff like that. Thanks for watching. Take care. God bless. And don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice and persevere.